perspectives, stories from the vault, some written in agony, felicity, and grief. Welcome to the Book Nook of Appraisal.
There is another world hidden behind your shelves. Let us see where the magic lies.
What a dazzling weather! I have my coffee here. Been sipping for ages. I'm Cassandra Chantalisa and I'll be your comrade for today's session together with Jalil Espoltero
Yes, good morning.
and Kirby Huayno.
Yes. How's your coffee? You know what? I've been eyeing this literary piece and I was shocked when one of our guests chose this for a literary analysis.
I mean, who's not excited? After all, it's a work of Ernest Hemingway.
Let's drop all those assumptions. I mean, yes, who's not excited about that? Let us welcome Nicole Catandian.
Hi, what a pleasant morning. I feel like this is the right time to sip a coffee while doing a literary review.
Yes, that was what I said earlier.
Cheers for coffee.
This literary piece has put me on a hook. The enchantment is exceptional.
As a reader, I could relate to that. Once you absorb the soul of the book, you'll be fascinated and it'll be hard to stop consuming the satisfaction by simply reading.
I agree with that. With how many different types of literature I've read, it's so easy to get engrossed and at times you would lose track of time with how interesting a story can be.
I think everyone would relate to that. Even I at times forget when it's time to eat.
Shall we start? Again, welcome to the Book Nook of Appraisal. The literary piece that we will review today is titled Heels Like White Elephant.
Let's first analyze the title of the literary piece.
The title, Hills Like White Elephant, has a deep explication. Ernest Hemingway used the title, Hills Like White Elephant, to symbolize Jake's pregnancy. The hills are rather closely related to the woman in the story being pregnant. The hills representing the woman's swollen stomach and breast, and the white elephant being praised as symbolism from Thailand being something sacred, and with something sacred, it will be burdened to the person.
Oh, so the white elephant here was the heels of the woman, that being the baby she was carrying. The man thought of the baby as a burden he could never carry, but at the end of the story, it seemed that he accepted it rather than be in denial of what had happened, just wanting Jig to be happy. Yet, he was too late as the girl made up her mind and followed through with the abortion.
So it seems like it is a symbolic story about a couple facing an unwanted and untimely pregnancy.
Yes, the meaning behind Hills Like White Elephant is that the man in the story is trying to forcefully convince the girl to have an abortion. The white elephant is a play on the idea of a white elephant, something that a person has, but wants to get rid of even at great expense.
How about the background of the author? Why did he write the story?
Ernest Hemingway was born on July 21, 1899 in Cicero, now renamed Oak Park, Illinois, US, and died on July 2, 1961 in Ketchum, Idaho. Hemingway loves to use the iceberg theory in almost all his works, making most of them have hidden meanings or meanings written hidden but in plain sight.
Based on my sources, his preferred themes when writing his works were about love, loss, war, travel, and wilderness. And most of his works are placed on different countries, just like Hills Like White Elephant, which was centered around Spain. As he grew older, he became anxious and slowly became ill. The illness, if I'm not wrong, was something hereditary he got from his father's side.
And did you know that when his final moments were near, he said to his wife his final goodbyes, which were "Good night, my kitten," as he grabbed his favorite shotgun and breathed his last air.
It was kind of depressing reading his biography and life stories, but also interesting, and like most of his books, he as well ended with a sad ending. Are you also wondering how the story is related to Hemingway?
The story represented most of his life of him being adventurous, not letting anything stop him, trying not to be tied down. He had been married in a total of 4 times while in his life there were no talks of any of his wives aborting a child, but he did leave them behind. The story reflected on his attitude towards women and anxiety of being a husband, or so others thought. He was against abortion, and when his sister asked money from him to get an abortion, he condemned her that aborting a child is murder.
Oh, I get it now. Hills Like White Elephant may be considered as a linking point between the storyline and the author's life.
How about his purpose of writing this literary piece? Why did he write Hills Like White Elephant?
It was to emphasize that certain matters are of grave importance, the burden that comes with the matter as well as the blessing it could give, that a single matter could very well change everything that you had. Like in the story, both the characters wanted was the opposite. The man not wanting the baby trying to persuade the woman to abort the child, and the woman loving the child trying to persuade the man to see reasons.
Yes, and also, his purpose in the story was to tell a story about a conversation, a turning point in a relationship, with the meaning stated indirectly in subtly.
In addition, Hemingway sets Hills Like White Elephant at a train station to highlight the fact that the relationship between the American man and the girl is at a crossroads.
Shall we start to narrate this story?
Yes, it seems like the golden sun rays of this morning are craving for a story time.
Let's start with the exposition. Hills Like White Elephant was set on a train station just across the hills of the Ebros Valley in Spain, where we are introduced simply to an American man and a girlfriend of his sitting at a table just outside the station, waiting for their train to arrive.
The rising action took part when they ordered 2 beers for each other as they talked to one another. The girl then said, "Don't the hills look as if they are white elephants?" The man then said he had never seen one. As they ordered more drinks, they lightly bickered at each other due to the taste of their drink. The man chastised that they should just enjoy themselves. The girl replied, just saying she was only having fun, and retracted her earlier comment, saying that the hills don't look like white elephants anymore.
The climax of the story was when they ordered more drinks as time goes by. The man then suddenly asked the girl, which he called by her name Jill, to do the operation. Not specifically saying what kind of operation that was supposed to be taken. Saying that it's only a simple operation, arguing that the operation would be simple, she wouldn't feel like she was even operated on.
The following action was when the girl was silent for a while. She then asked what would happen to them after the operation is taken. The man replied that nothing will change with them and that everything will go back to what it was like before, saying that they would still love each other. The girl then gave in to the man, finally agreeing. The man replied that he won't force her if she didn't want to do it, but told that it was the best course of action to take. The girl then said that he will do the operation so long as he would still love her, live happily afterwards. So what do you think was their solution, Kirby?
I think it was the man then said how much he loved the girl, but the girl didn't love herself. The man replied weakly that if she felt that way, then she shouldn't do the operation. As the girl then walked to look at the scenery, the man said again that she shouldn't do the operation if that was something she didn't want, and would go through with not doing the operation so long as the girl stays happy. They argued once more on whether or not to do the operation. The girl then had enough and asked the man to stop talking. They were then approached by a woman bringing their 2 drinks, saying that the train will be coming in a few moments. They then went inside the bar where everyone that was waiting for the train was. The man then asked the girl if she felt better now, and the girl replied, "She's fine now."
We don't know quite how things will happen in their life, but it did strain their relationship.
Now that we're all splashed with the plot of the story, we can now discover the literary devices used.
Let's start with the characters. The first character that I could think of is the American man. The man in the story was someone forceful, caring, and anxious, with how he tried talking with the girl to do the operation while trying not to hurt her with his words, showing how much he loved her, and how he was anxious of becoming a father, not wanting to have a burden in his hands, trying multiple times persuading the girl to go through with the operation.
Next is the girl named Jig. The girl was someone passionate and emotional. She only wants to be happy with her love, not wanting to do the operation. But after the relentless persuasion of the man, she relented and went with the operation bitterly. She was someone who would sacrifice anything for her love. which was quite sad when she expressed on how she felt for herself. The third character would be the woman serving at the bar.
How about the symbolisms?
There were multiple symbolisms I have observed. The hills represented the belly of the girl which was growing. White elephants represented the burden of what the child brings. And something I found interesting enough was the part where the scenery changed on page 3, where the girl looked at a beautiful scenery where mountains, rivers, trees, and fields of grains were located, and suddenly looking at the part where there were only the dry lands. The first part representing life and then death.
How about the imagery?
The train station imagery gives the sense of transience in the relationship of the couple. The heat imagery gives the sense of unresolved conflicts boiling over. The elephant in the room is the abortion that Jake and the man must decide whether or not to do. A white elephant gift is an outrageously gift that is given in jest, not that no one really wants. Jake compares the mountain to white elephant but then decide they don't really look like them.
Oh, so this is a metaphor for the baby she seems to want to keep, while the man wants it to be just the two of them again.
Exactly. While the drinks are a distraction for Jake and the American man, Jake remarks that everything tastes like licorice, especially things she's waited so long to try. And it's always a disappointment. And how their talk was becoming bitter that she doesn't want to talk about it anymore.
So this could be a metaphor for the baby she's thinking about having, or for her hopes that the man will be more open to having a baby, and instead he lets Jig down by advocating for the abortion.
Got that right. Jig compares the hills to white elephants, but the American man is no longer dazzled by anything she says. He chalks it up to worrying about the pregnancy. As she looks at the hills again, she realizes that nothing can go back to the way it was before in their relationship. The beauty of the hills is like their happiness, and she knows they will never have that back.
How about the theme of the literary piece?
The underlying theme of Ernest Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants is the difficulties that a couple, particularly the female, faces when confronted with an unexpected and ultimately unwanted pregnancy.
I agree with that, and I think Ernest used the iceberg theory as a theme where he hid meanings inside the words, not telling the readers what the story was about, making readers give themselves their own answers on what they thought was happening in the story. It was a depressing story, to be honest, but it brought the light on how abortion was and how it could destroy a connection of loving couple. What do you think about that?
Definitely is depressing, but it did show the effects of an abortion to a loving relationship becoming strained, and their love for each other, like a candle that shined bright for their love for each other. It slowly died out.
How about the persona and addressee of the literary piece?
The way the story told itself was in a third-person point of view, where you, as the reader, watch or rather read, as the story goes on, reading the dialogues of the characters as they argue with each other. In Addressee, I think the story is addressing people who think of life as something that could be thrown away easily, like how the man showed and forced the woman to abort their child. He speaks as if it was an object that could be replaced even knowing it was a life that wasn't even born yet. This addresses the people who are like that.
How about the cultural highlights?
It highlighted the beautiful scenery and aspect of what could be found in Spain, also using words or meanings and such from Thailand culture, like the white elephant, which represented its sacredness and burden. And it showed how dark society could be, like how the story approached abortion, indiscriminately killing unborn children.
How about the lessons?
Personally, I learned many things, one of which is to never force your ideals on a person if they didn't want it in the first place, and to always think of what the person in front of you felt when talking to them with words that could pierce them, as well as to never take life as if it was something that could easily be thrown away. How about you, Nicole?
Honesty is a key moral all true to abide by, but lying to someone is one of the easiest moral to break because one is only telling someone what they want to hear. which is why the man is using dishonesty in the form of lying as a tactic to convince Jake to do what he wants her to with her unborn child.
It demonstrates how people's minds are controlled by another and live their life according to what others want them to do, since their value is based on what others think of them. If we also know in ourselves that what people say is not right, we should think about our own decision. We should not listen to what others say especially and not everything they say is right and good for us.
And I guess that's it. That was a fun roller coaster ride adventure with a literary piece titled Heels Like White Elephant. We've unlocked different parts of the story and we've witnessed a side of the story that you will not notice upon reading it for the first time.
Yes, you're right.
Oh, for sure. There were parts when I researched the Gawin past that I didn't know was something that had meanings. That's just how good Hemingway was when hiding meanings. It was fun, nonetheless.
As you have said earlier, Miss Nicole, you were enthralled with this literary piece. What would be your message for the readers that are planning to give this one a shot? How will you recommend this literary piece?
Oh, I would recommend the piece to people who are or couples who made a mistake so that they could see how things could end when a single argument could make the relationship fall apart. This literary is more or less an advice book for couples. That's my take on how they should approach the literary piece.
Thank you, Miss Nicole, for letting us hear your thoughts, and thank you for spending this morning with us.
Thank you, Miss Nicole.
Yes, thank you. Shall we give her a clap?
Of course, well deserved.
Shall we proceed? Let us welcome Mr. John Benedict Peñaranda.
Good morning. I enjoyed watching the first session with Miss Nicole. I was nervous earlier and now it suddenly flew into thin air. I could not describe the feeling that's been traveling through my nerves, but I'm sure that this will be fun.
What literary piece are we going to analyze this time?
Welcome to the Book Nook of Appraisal. The literary piece that we will review today is a poem titled Crossing the Bar by Alfred Tennyson.
Let's first analyze the title of the literary piece.
Crossing the Bar was about the acceptance of death, where the author used metaphors like the pilot being God. And the bar in the title was supposed to be crossed. It's a sandbar which was interpreted as the line between life and death. And the person had accepted his end and crossed the bar.
The narrator states twice that they don't want people to mourn or be sorrowful about their situation. The poem uses the metaphor of a voyage at the sea to describe the journey from life to death.
Yes, within the poem, the image of the sea is used to represent the barrier between life and death. The construction of this metaphor centers on the image of crossing the bar. A bar is physically a bar of sand in shallow water. The poem contains several maritime themes, which is appropriate for Alfred Tennyson, who lived up near the sea.
How about the background of the author? Why did he write the story?
Alfred Lord Tennyson was born on August 6, 1809 in Somersby, Lincolnshire, England, and died on October 6, 1892 in Alworth, Surrey. He was a Victorian-era writer where he became a poetic spokesperson in time of Victoria's reign. He was known for his long flowing lines. He was very popular and widely read during his lifetime. Tennyson wrote a number of famous poems including The Idylls of the King and Ulysses.
Did you know that Tennyson spent almost 2 months writing Crossing the Bar? It was written in usual flowing style with verse and alliteration, keeping to his favorite theme of death and loss.
Interesting. I think this is somehow connected to his personal life. Are you also wondering what is his purpose of writing this literary piece? Why did he wrote Crossing the Bar? How is the background of the author related to the literary piece?
Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote this poem since he knew his life was about to end. He wrote of how he accepted that he will soon be gone from the living. He accepted that his own story was about to end.
The story was related to his old age, where every story ends. He accepted that he will die on only a matter of time, as his days are counted. And like the story, both accepted and only waited to see the face of their pilot to say that they had arrived at the place where he will be stopped.
The poem describes his placid and accepting attitude towards death. Although he followed his work with subsequent poems, he requested that Crossing the Bar appears as the final poem in all collection of his work.
Shall we start to narrate the story?
The poem, as said multiple times, were about acceptance and death. The first part of the poem spoke of the person knowing he was close to death. The second part was about looking where he was, his home, the place he lived the most of his life, the part of denial. The third comes as acceptance, as he accepted his fate, as he says farewell, and asked that there be no sadness for where he goes to his fate. The fourth and last was where he looked forward to his fate, to see his path as he crosses the part that splits life and death.
Now that we're all splashed with the plot of the story, we can now discover the literary devices used.
Start with the characters. First is the person speaking. The person was someone accepting and calm, as he waited for the one who will guide him to his resting place, where he was ready to cross the line bordering life and death.
Second is the pilot. This was a metaphor speaking that the pilot was God, and the person was sitting on the back seat, waiting for the pilot to land to the place where he will be resting.
What about the symbolisms?
The first symbolism that I have observed is the sunset, which is a time of day often used in poetry to symbolize dying or death. Indeed, the sun setting over the horizon and thus the light of day fading into the dark of night seems a fitting symbol for the end of a human life.
Second is the bar, as it was mentioned in the poem's title and in the third line of the first stanza. It refers to a sandbar. It symbolizes the transition between life.
Third is the tide. Here is a fitting symbol for the transition from life to death, because the tide is controlled by the gravitational pull of the moon, thus implying that the speaker's death is inevitable and also that the speaker feels pulled toward his death.
Fourth is the dark. Here is a symbol of death and implies that the speaker expects death to be perhaps something like a boy. Fifth is the blood. That the stream flows into here symbolizes the all-consuming nature of death. How about the imagery?
The sea, which is a barrier between life and death, and the sandbar on which he was standing on is the borderline of it, where he only needs to wait or cross to meet his pilot. Words like the dark, flood, boundless deep, pilot, bar, and so on creates visual images. The reader is made to visualize them in his or her mind when reading the poem to immerse themselves.
How about the theme of the literary piece?
Crossing the Bar is a poem in which the speaker confronts the reality of imminent death and finds a kind of peace in the thought of dying. Rather than being scared by death, the speaker presents is a mere transition into another kind of life.
Siki, is it the afterlife?
Exactly.
He also emphasized in the poem that no one should feel bad, cry, or mourn when he dies. This is because he is going to see God in a better place, which is the afterlife.
I also noticed his use of the concept of time. He wants to tell us not to bother about the time of death, but to embrace it.
I'll tell you something about Alfred Tennyson. Did you know that almost all the themes in his poetry were about violence, murder, others, mercenariness, social climbing, marriages arranged for profit instead of love, and estrangements between families and friends? This poem was out of the ordinary, so the people who read this in his era know one thing about the piece, that he, our author, Alfred Lord Tennyson, is close to death and he accepted it.
It's interesting. How about the persona and addressee of the literary piece?
The way the poem spoke was somewhat in the first person. As we read the poem, we felt as though we were the ones accepting our death. Most of the story viewed the surroundings and made them in metaphors like a person would sometimes do.
This speaks to all the people that death is inevitable, but we should not despair just because we know we can run away from it. Accepting that we will someday die, we lift an invisible burden that we carry, and when that burden and fear of dying is lifted from us, we are inspired or rather motivated to live our life to its fullest, leaving no regrets behind, so that when the time comes we are on our deathbed, we sleep with a smile on our face knowing we left no regrets as we meet the pilot that was said in the story.
How about the cultural highlights?
Alfred Tennyson's cultural context. It is very likely that the identity of the pilot is the Christian God. Jesus is considered the pilot of the church and guides the Christian's life. The title Crossing the Bar suggests the cross of Jesus, the transformational event that, in Christianity, enables people to be reconciled to God and reach heaven, which is beyond the earth's time and place.
How about the lessons?
That while death is scary, it will eventually come for us. As we accept that death will come to us, it would feel as if a burden was lifted from you. As you wait to meet with our pilot, The author of our own story, the creator, fear is natural but accepting is relieving.
What do you think about that, Kirby?
The poem's moral lesson is that we should never fear or mourn death because it is a natural process. To meet the Creator God face to face, we must accept death calmly and cross the threshold between life and death.
That was deep. Rather of being terrified of death, the speaker views it as only a passage into a new existence.
Yes, I guess we're done. I'll be the first to say thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Mr. John Benedict Peñaranda, for letting us hear your thoughts, and thank you for spending this morning with us.
This morning session was amusing.
Right? It was awesome, but also quite depressing since we talked about some dark pieces today, like abortion and acceptance of death.
Let's magnify the book nook and hunt for another adventure to voyage. This is Book Nook of Appraisal, closing today's chapter. Have a good morning, everyone.